2 o'clock.
Oh, okay. Oh, for this?
Did you have it?
No, because it's snow. It was right at the three.
Charlie come in?
I'll let Charlie sit.
This is a very happy time. I heard that you're going to move to Lexington. Well, sometimes a person has to.
Where I
I'm going to move to Lexington.
So, our daughter is saying,
I know that. I knew that was the whole reason. You know,
we tried to find a place that was very accessible to her. So we're very close to this return community.
what kind of community is it? What's it like?
It's a senior living.
Are you old enough? But what's it like? Is it like a big high-rise building or a lot of little houses? Or?
It's about 6 or 7. Mark.
I'm going to show you I have a microphone. Everybody hear me okay?
Yep. Yes.
All right, very good. One speaks good here. First of all, I'd like to wish everybody good afternoon. And I welcome you on behalf of the Nation Lunch congregation to our historic Nation Lunch Synagogue, our beautiful sanctuary. A couple of things up front I'd like to announce. Cell phones. Please turn them off, silence them, they don't need. You don't have to wait around for lights. Jim, I appreciate it. There'll be no recording of the presentation. We'll be streaming it live. We'll send the link out to those who asked for it. They will send that link to be able to watch it live today. After the performance, we will have a brief meet and greet out in the social hall. This is one of the refreshments. And then we'll be doing a Q&A, question and answer with John, Gene, and Jeff. So we invite everyone to please stick around and do that. Also, when you came in, you notice that we're not charging admission for this, and I'll explain that in a minute. We have opted to take donations. And those donations are 100% for John's foundation afterwards. So, if you've not already, we ask you to like to donation, please do no requirement. And if you don't have anything today, these cards are available out there. Just put up these cards on the back. It's a QR code. If you click on the QR code, you go to the site, you'll be able to make a donation. And our I said, that's 100% for John Batman. All right.
Tell them who you are, Mark.
Mark,
Tell them who you are.
who I am?
Oh,
My name is Mark Rose, and I'm very proud in making these types of presentations possible. Let's see. All right, as I indicated before, we're not turning a mission for this performance. And the reason for that is the generosity of the Floyd family. We had Billy Glicker here with us this afternoon, and one of our benefactors, David Glenn, who recently passed away and missed David dearly. David was one who always believed that we needed to bring this congregation together through social activities, things to bring us together as a congregation, and things that would unite us in the community. And that's the reason we planned this program. David approved this program, and I know we're looking forward to it. Before we pass away, hopefully David, you're out there watching this presentation for you. Let's see. Today, we honor one of our own, John Rosenberg. I met John many years ago. He was good friends with my parents at Williams. See what I've known him about forever. I've come to know him much more detail through his work and his love for our legal system, both here in this country and particularly in Kentucky. He's a Holocaust survivor, and he spends many hours talking to students, adults, groups that are interested in what actually happened during the Holocaust, keep that alive. Jeff Scher, who is our one-man actor and writer, today in this program will be the presentation. Jeff actually met John through his involvement with the Defender's Office over in Kentucky. John was on the Defender's Commission, and that's where he and Jeff met. Jeff is single-handedly put this presentation together for John's honor. Respect John, respect Jeff. Now, without further ado, I present to you Jeff Scher, Stumbling Stones to John Rosenberg.
I hope he's here.
There are things that make us stumble, not to harm us, to slow us down, to remind us someone stood here before, someone will stand here after. They're called stumbling stones. They ask only this: carry something forward, a memory, courage, the work undone. Because when we stumble, we have a choice: walk on, untouched, or rise, carrying something we didn't begin with. 1970, Kentucky. Jean and I, along with our 5-month-old son, Michael, pitch a tent in Jenny Wiley State Park. I'd walk every trail, I look behind every stump. I asked the park ranger twice: no bears, no wolves. Jean, she looks at me with that sparkle in her eyes, and she says, any lions and tigers? No, I'll look for flying monkeys next time. The next morning, we stand in a square in Prestonsburg, Kentucky. A diner behind us, courthouse across the way, park benches where old men tip their hats as we walk by. It doesn't take long to see the whole town from where we stand. Jean, she looks at me and she says, maybe this is home. I don't know. I'm walking too fast, talking too fast. I'm thinking about how we get in, we set up a legal aid office, and then we get out. That's the plan. At least that's how I keep it safe in my head. But standing here in this courtyard, seeing how the mountains fold in around the town like tired arms, the cracks of the courthouse steps. I feel something I haven't felt for a long time. 1937, Germany. I was 6 years old. My family, we lived in a second-floor apartment in Magdeburg, Germany. My father, Rudolph, a school teacher, my mother, Gerda, my younger brother, Harry, just a toddler at the time, and my grandmother, Therese. And below our apartment was a courtyard. Cracked cobblestones, drain pipes that rattled in the rain, laundry lines strung like banners in the wind. That courtyard was my whole world. It's where I learned how to ride a bike. I must have fallen 100 times that day, wobbling past the garbage bins and the cellar doors. I remember my mother in the second floor. She'd read in the window, clapping and yelling every time I went a little bit longer than the past. Across the courtyard, perpendicular to our apartment, was the synagogue. It's where my father helped with services. He read from the Torah. He worked with the rabbi to keep the community strong. I remember one time a man was coming to town, Dr. Moshe. He was raising money for Jews that were fleeing Europe, and the rabbi told him to take my father with him. Rudy knows everyone. Friday nights, the lights from the windows of the synagogue would fall across the cobblestones. The music and the prayers would rise through the evening air. It was where neighbors gathered. It's where our faith anchored us. It's where, even as a child, I knew I was part of something larger than myself. It was home. Standing in the square in Prestonsburg, I bring that memory with me. I'm not a big shot. I'm not some crusader coming to save the day. I'm just a young lawyer. I want to build something that will matter to people who don't expect anyone to stand by them. So when she asked me, maybe this is home, I stopped. And I listened. I really listened. Maybe it is. So we make plans. We'll move here. We'll stay. Then maybe a year or two. We'll make a start. We'll help where we can. And so we head back east to pack and to prepare. While we're gone, a meeting takes place. This is where I should have looked for wolves. Gentlemen, I'll get right to it. A man like John Rosenberg doesn't move to a place like Prestonsburg by accident. No, sir. He moved here when the ground has been softened, when folks get restless, when outside money starts trickling in, and that is exactly what's happening here. He wants to start legal aid office, funded by Washington, crawling with lawyers who don't know a coal miner from a corn stalk. They'll sue our businesses. They'll clog up our courts. They'll go after landlords, coal operators, the very people who built this town. It ain't just about the law. No, not harder. Rosenberg. You know the type. Don't talk like us. Don't think like us. Now, I don't mean just because he went to one of those fancy Eastern law schools, so Lord knows that would be enough. He's one of them glorifiers and recruiters. One of those radicals who think that hard-working men like us, business owners, property owners, that we're the enemy. Now, if that were all, maybe we could ignore it. But a man like Rosenberg, with his background, his connections, I did some asking around. Turns out he's been whispering in the right ears up in Washington for years. Justice, Civil Rights Division. You know the ones. Same ones who sent their lawyers down south to stir up trouble, and now he wants to start a legal aid office here under the same banner. You know what? I wrote a letter to Washington. I told him plainly, the establishment of this office will introduce dangerous outside influences that do not reflect the values of this community. That's what I told him. That's not all. That's how it starts. First, it's lawsuits, then it's regulations, then it's some fancy new federal commission telling us what we can do with our own businesses, our own land. Well, gentlemen, it stops right here. Anyone who helps him, who rents him office space, even shakes his hand, gonna find his friends don't return his calls no more. That his tenants might start looking elsewhere, that the bank ain't so generous with its loans. Gentlemen, this is our town, and it's going to stay here. (1938), Germany. I'm in my bedroom. The door is closed, but I can hear my father on the other side of the door. Gerda, I gathered all the paperwork and I put it in the satchel. The immigration papers, the passports, the voice, birth records, the list of things we still need to do. It's in the satchel behind the stove, under the floor, the loose one, under the second crate. The black satchel with the broken handle, you know it? I need for you to understand, to be able to find it in case something happens to me. I don't mean to frighten you, Gerda, but something is happening. They are using that boy, Herschel Grinspan, the one that shot the German diplomat, the one that the press doesn't tell you saw his parents, Polish Jews, dropped at the border like so much garbage. Goebbels had a meeting tonight. He gave a speech in Munich. He said, the Jews are to blame. Let the German people strike back. Let the people handle the situation on their own. I stopped by the party headquarters on the way home. There were stormtroopers everywhere. Hitler youth in uniform, laughing, excited, like they were waiting for a parade. I spoke to one of the men on the fire brigade. He told me that their orders were clear to stand by, be prepared, but only protect the Aryan homes. Yet this has been brewing. It started first in Nuremberg, where they stripped away our citizenship. No votes, just Jews. And then the boycotts, the signs in the stores that said, don't shop from the Jews. And then they wouldn't let our children go to the schools anymore, so I started teaching over at the synagogue. People we've known for years, that we've broken bread with, that would cross the street to avoid being seen with us. Some from fear, others embracing the hate. And so we thought that if we were quiet enough, if we were careful enough, they would leave us alone. But most times were over. We must prepare for the worst. I fear tonight they may be at our doorstep. (1970). Kentucky. After the landlord who gave us the original lease backed out of it due to that local pressure, we opened the first office of the Appalachian Research and Defense Fund at Jenny Wiley State Park in a cabin. And Apparet started seeing lights. Mr. Rosenberg, I don't know if you can help. I ain't never had much to do with lawyers. I grew up on that mountain, like my daddy and his daddy before him. We worked the land. It was hard work, but it was ours. At least I thought it was. I built that house with my own two hands, raised my boys. And now the coal company, they show up and they say that they own the coal underneath and they can do anything they want to get it. Say, my granddad sold it to him back in 1902. Granddaddy, he can't even read. They told him that they wouldn't touch the land, just the coal underneath, and he believed them. Now they got bulldozers up on the ridge, tearing the whole damn hillside apart. When they blast the walls on my house, shake so much my youngest thinks it's a tornado. The well we've been drinking out of for years, dry, gone. Air smells like diesel. Every morning I wake up to a new, fresh-coated dust on the front porch. And you know what? They don't give a damn. They say it's all legal. Just wave that deed in my face like it's the word of God. I don't know what to do, Mr. Rosenberg. My wife says that maybe we should pack up and move on, but I don't want to leave. I keep thinking, why should we be the ones to leave? Why do they get to come in and destroy everything, and take everything? This is my home, Mr. Rosenberg. I don't know what to do. They got lawyers, they got money, and I got, well, I got you. And my client said that I'm the only hope he has to save his home from being destroyed. Tikkun Olam. Tikkun Olam, that's Hebrew for repairing the world. It's a call to action that my father instilled in me from a very early age. The world is broken. It's not enough for us to grieve for it. Our duty is to repair it. The Tikkun Olam reminds us that when we stand with someone who has no other champion, that is a step in a path towards a more fair world. That weight of knowing that sympathy is not enough might seem like too much for any one person to bear, but it's exactly that weight that gives our life purpose. Tikkun Olam. 1938, Germany. Kristallnacht. We couldn't sleep for the sound of it. The sound of the glass breaking again and again. They were shattering all the windows of the Jewish shops. It was like thunder over and over again. They were smashing their way through our lives. My family, my parents, my brother, my grandmother, we were at home in our second floor apartment, and we could hear them coming up the stairs. And then they were pounding on the door. They were hammering against the wood like they were going to break it open. And then the door flew open and they were there. They were Nazis in our apartment. We knew one of them. His wife, Elizabeth, was the midwife who helped my mother in this apartment on the day I was born. But he made like we shouldn't recognize us. They rousted us up, ordered us out, down the stairs into the courtyard. They were going back and forth to the synagogue. They brought out the Torahs, all the prayer books, and they piled them in the center of the courtyard. Lit them on fire. My mother, she stood there with my brother Harry in her arms, holding my hand with the other. Next to her was one of the Nazis, the man whose wife's hands caught me when I came into this world. He was standing there with a rifle slung over his shoulder, watching the flames. My mother, she looked at this man with a gun, and she said, "Are you going to kill us?" He didn't say anything at first. Then he said, "I don't know." Don't know. When it was over, after they dynamited the interior of the synagogue, they let us go back up to our apartment. It wasn't much left. They had ransacked it. They'd taken a pick to the walls and to all the pictures. My parents, they pulled a mattress into the kitchen, and that's where I slept that night. (1895), another meeting takes place in New York City. Titanings of industry. I'm going to show you a brand new kind of deed. It's a time machine. Don't be for it, really. It's called a broad form deed. Brand new thinking. Efficient. Revolutionary. You see, with the old way that you buy the land, you get the surface and the minerals underneath, right? But if there's someone living on the land, someone that farming it, won't be even a problem with that. But with a broad form deed, the new way of doing this, we make sure that you can come, you just buy the mineral rights. You see, and we make sure that you can come in anytime you want and take your coal however you want, whenever you want. Then let me show you some of this language here. It's beautiful. The mineral owner shall have the right to enter upon and use the surface of the land in any such manner as may be necessary or convenient for the purpose of mining and removing the coal. Necessary and convenient. That's the magic. The surface owner can't say no. Isn't that right now? Yes, most of this coal, it's under steep hills. We can't mine. It's too hard to dig. But my engineers, they tell me it's the future. 20, 30 years from now, they're going to have machines that can tear through a mountain like a layer cake. And think about it this way. You're buying coal futures for pennies today. You have the rights to millions tomorrow. All you need is a farmer to sign a piece of paper. I got bundles of these ready. You pay them once, then you mine forever. My father, he taught me that justice isn't something that just happens in the courtroom. It happens through small, everyday acts. Helping a neighbor patch a roof before it rains, setting an extra plate at the table for somebody who's hungry, sharing what you have, because that's what right feels like. It's called tzedakah. Some people say that means charity, but it's really more than that. The best you can say in English is righteous giving, not out of pity, but because that's what justice looks like. Now, if you want to understand tzedakah, look at what Jean was doing in Kentucky while I was building a case and building an office. Now, she didn't have a title, she didn't have a paycheck. She was a young mother with a 1-year-old who had just come from Washington, D.C., where she had childbirth classes and prenatal and postnatal support. When she got here, she saw right away what was missing. There was no childbirth classes. There was no prenatal transportation. There was no follow-up support. So she did what she knows how to do. She started the first natural childbirth classes in eastern Kentucky. She would gather women together. She'd teach them about their bodies, about breathing, about labor and delivery, about their rights. For many of these women, it was the first time that anyone had ever spoken to them as powerful, deserving, capable mothers. It was more than just about childbirth. It was about agency, confidence, care. It's a document. Jean, she builds things, community, relationships. I confront things. I fight for justice. I had a law degree. I had the best legal upbringing that anyone could hope for, working with John Gore at the Department of Justice. I didn't go to law school to become rich. I went looking for a compass. I needed to see that the law could do more than serve the powerful. And I saw that in John Gore. He marched James Merritt through the gates of Old Miss with the governor and half the state against him. In Haywood, Tennessee, when black sharecroppers were evicted for trying to vote, it was John Gore who brought the case. He would tell lawyers, not just FBI agents, get out of the field. Go find out for yourselves. And in Mississippi, when 3 young activists, Goodman, Cheney, Schwerner, were murdered, registering people to vote, it was John Gore who brought the prosecution of what was later known as the Mississippi burning case. So, when I had the opportunity to sit opposite him, I hoped I'd earn the right to stay in that room. And Mr. Gore, I want to thank you for interviewing me. You asked, why me? Why this job? When my family, we first immigrated to New York City, there wasn't employment. There weren't enough jobs, too many immigrants. So we moved down south to South Carolina, where many Jews found jobs in the textile industry, often in shops, mills owned by other Jewish families. I was just a kid at the time. I was trying to figure out what it was to be an American, to figure out what it was to be Jewish, to be a Southerner, in a place that let you know when you weren't part of them. Yet sure, I saw the discrimination firsthand. The water fountains that were colored black. At the movie theaters, the blacks had to go in the back and sit up in the balcony. At stores, they were waiting on last, no matter how long they'd been there. Actually, I didn't think much of it at the time. My family, we were so grateful to be in this country. We would not want to rock the boat. We would have been happy with whatever society they lumped us down in. But still, I'm a little disappointed that the Jewish leaders there, they weren't more assertive. They didn't speak out about the segregation because they were afraid if they did, the shops would be burned down. It wasn't until much later that something happened that led me to being here today. I've been a hard worker. My whole life started out as a kid. In the mornings, I was out before dawn, on my bike, slinging the Spartanburg Herald before breakfast. After school, I did scouts, made eagle, a lot of camping, a lot of leadership, a lot of knots. On weekends, I worked developing photos at a local studio. I worked in a store. I learned how to make change, look people in the eye. I went to Duke on a scholarship that I lost for working too hard in the dining room. I majored in chemistry. Did ROTC. After college, I joined the Air Force in '53, just as the Korean War was winding down. And I spent 4 years as a navigator on B-29s, SA-16 Albatross amphibians stationed in England. I spent my days plotting great circle routes, dropping off special forces on secret missions in Germany, helping to guide rescue missions and trawlers in trouble. The closest I came to combat was in '56 during the Suez Crisis. And I remember sitting on the front lines, engines warm, orders sealed, not knowing whether the United States was going to side with Britain or France or remain neutral. I remember thinking that if we launch and Israel ends up on the wrong side of the political chessboard, I could be up in the air against the one refuge that saved my people. It was a trip back to the United States where something happened that brought me here today. We were flying back on a Gunman Albatross, not a sleep plane, more like a flying boat that had given up on trying to be elegant. We were a tight-knit crew. Riding with us was my friend from Charleston, South Carolina, Abe Jenkins. He was an officer and a navigator on another crew, both of us stationed at Molesworth Air Force Base in England. He was one of the finest men I ever knew. So we landed in New York, and we were both in uniform, and we had time to go home. Abe was going back to Charleston, I was going down to Spartanburg, so we got on the train together. Now, when you're in uniform, there's supposed to be a certain kind of respect. You know, we both had the same patches on our shoulder, the same brass on our hats. But when we got to Washington, D.C., Abe turned to me and he said, "Time for me to go." And I said, "What do you mean? You're not changing trains." Abe said, "No, I'm changing cars. I have to go in the back now with a black seat." That moment, here we were in the same uniform, having served the same country, flown the same missions, yet he couldn't sit next to me because of the color of his skin, because of the rules of a country that hadn't figured out how to keep its promises. And you might think that it would have gotten to me back when I was in South Carolina, but it didn't have the same impact on me. Seeing Abe Jenkins get up, walk to the back of the train, in full uniform. Well, after I finished with the Air Force, I moved back home, and I tried to save up money. I put my chemistry degree to work, and then I enrolled in North Carolina Law School. And that's where I met Julius Chambers. He was brilliant. So committed. He was the first black editor of the North Carolina Law Review. He was number one in his class. He faced all sorts of discrimination, but he never backed down. So when I finished law school, Mr. Dorr, I knew that I needed to work for you. You're taking the toughest cases. Voter rights, discrimination, school segregation, but there weren't any jobs in your department, so I took a job in the antitrust division, so I would be here when the opportunity opened up. So when you called me here today, growing up in the segregated South and staying silent, I don't want to be silent. I want to be part of the fight. And that's why I'm here, Mr. Dorr. This is where the fight is, and I believe I can help. I got the job. Next thing I knew, I was packing up to head to Mississippi. They put me right on the hardest cases, the voter registration cases. Looking into poll taxes, literacy tests. They were giving the black applicants these impossible, ridiculous questions, like how many jelly beans in this jar? And we would file cases county by county, trying to break the system. Employment discrimination, school segregation, police brutality, Klan intimidation, and violence. The people that we worked with, the courage of the black farmers, the day workers, the teachers, it was extraordinary. They risked everything. 1965, Kentucky. While I was in Mississippi, I had no inkling that another civil rights battle was going on the slopes of Knott County, Kentucky. Ollie Widow Combs was making her stand. She had buried her husband that March and was taking care of her paralyzed son. And in November, the Caperton Coal Company bulldozers showed up with a broad form deed to tear up her land and her family cemetery. So she and two of her boys laid down in front of the machines and refused to move. They were arrested, hauled down the mountain. And later she laughed, "I was just trying to be as heavy as I could be. I didn't think they'd be able to carry me off." That Thanksgiving, she and two of her sons ate their holiday meal in the Knott County Jail. And frail, elderly woman, flanked by her boys, giving thanks behind bars instead of in their own home. 1965, Mississippi. John Doerr transferred a new legal assistant into our division. Jean, she would do jury profiles, witness prep, comb through documents after documents. Jean came to the Department of Justice with her own sense of purpose. Her Quaker upbringing had taught her to speak truth to power, to act, not observe. It's true, we were different kinds of fighters, but we were in the same fight together. Jean, she would show genuine compassion to clients, colleagues, everyone. And she would remind me that it was more about winning cases. It was about the lives we touched, the stories behind every case, every argument. 1971, Kentucky. One thing I learned from John Doerr is what he called the romance of the record. He would teach us that you start first with the paper, not the legal arguments, not the briefs that are there. You just look at the paper, what it says, who signed it, when they signed it, what the words are on the paper. And with the broad form deeds, it was the same story over and over again. In 1902, a farmer signs a piece of paper for $5 with the language in it that changes everything. The coal may be removed in any such manner as necessary or convenient. So we were going to make two arguments. First, intent. Now, when you look at when these were signed, strip mining didn't exist. The person who was signing this was thinking that it was the pick and shovel mining. There's no way they could have thought any manner necessary meant the complete destruction of their land. Number two, constitutional property rights. If the surface owner has no control, no say whatsoever in what happens to their land, what sort of constitutional right is that? So we file our pleadings. The coal company lawyers, they argue that the law doesn't care what people thought when they signed the contract. It only cares about the words in that contract. Months pass. Do depositions, expert witness testimony, arguments to the judge, and then the ruling comes down. We lose. The court says that the law must uphold the contract as it's signed, meaning the coal companies could do as they please. It gave them the right not just to dig, but to level, to ruin, to poison. No responsibility to the people who lived on the land. We lost, but we made the record. We laid the groundwork for what would happen next. 1965. North Carolina. A stick of dynamite landed on the front porch of my friend Julius Chambers. He woke to an explosion, to the shattering of glass, and a warning from the Ku Klux Klan for the work that his small civil rights law firm was doing. John Doerr also heard the message, and he sent two of us south, Nick Flannery and I, down to South Carolina. Our assignment was clear. Talk with the police, comfort the family, get the facts. After a morning of taking pictures and talking with the witnesses, Nick and I, we found ourselves in a lunch line in a Charlotte diner, standing silent in our thoughts. I knew the pattern, the bricks torn from mortar, glass, furniture scattered. I'd seen it before in Magdeburg. I kept thinking how fragile it all is. And Nick, I was just thinking about Jean. She told someone one time, he walks too fast, he talks too fast. When I hear him coming down the hallway, I hide in the library. And she told me about when she was in high school up in Aberdeen and near Philly. They were doing those Cold War air raid drills, when the people would duck under desks. And Jean, she refused. She said that they were promoting propaganda of fear and terror, and that there was no way hiding under a desk would help at all in a nuclear war. They hauled her down to the principal's office, and he told her she's a communist dupe. And from now on, when the sirens go, she's going to sit in front of that plate glass window, so she'll be the first one to be killed. Jean, she told me that when people treat you like that, when they punish you for your conscience, it makes you even more committed to thinking about what you're doing and why. When she took the oath for joining the Department of Justice, the same oath that we took of loyalty, Jean, she being Jean, after the part where they said, and protect and support the Constitution of the United States, Jean added, in so much as my conscience will allow. And they took her anyway. Working these days together, lunches, dinner, long nights, Jean, she just makes my life better and brighter. We've talked some about marriage, but one day, I'm going to call her right now. Hi, Jean. Yeah, it's John. Yeah, I'm in a Charlotte diner. Nick and I, we were over at Julius's this morning. The family's up. Yeah, I'm talking too fast. I'll slow down. Jean, I know we've talked about it. I just, after this morning, I needed to talk to you. I needed to hear your voice. Jean, will you marry me? Yes, you will. Oh, yes, we can work out all the details. I just needed to talk to you right now. Yeah, I'll see you soon. I love you, Jean. Oh, look, Nick, it looks like I'm getting married. And who knew a payphone in a Charlotte diner could be so romantic? Clearly, I have a knack for grand gestures. (1974), Kentucky. I think we've finally done it. Our hard work leads to the legislature passing what is called a consent law, meaning that before the coal companies can dig on someone's land, they must get the permission of the surface owner. Didn't last long. The Kentucky Supreme Court tossed it out. Said it was a violation. It was a private violation of the private delegation of state power. Let me say that again, a private delegation of state power. That consent law, it's gone. We lost again. That same year, 1974, our daughter Annie was born. And Jean, she kept doing what she was doing, building, connecting with the community. She was working with a community college in a system that wasn't built for young mothers. She would help them get used to the way it would work there by literally walking them from building to building. Later, when Michael started school, we realized that they didn't have a playground, so we built one, using the coal company equipment to scrape the land clean. Jean, she became president of the PTA, wrote the first grants for the gifted and talented programs. She brought science tents to the schools with projections on the ceilings of classrooms so that Floyd County kids could see the universe and reach for the stars. That dream continued to grow. Later, when I was on the board of Morehead State University, we worked to bring the East Kentucky Science Center to Prestonsburg, a real planetarium right here in the mountains. And out in Davie, a company coal camp that most people had forgotten. They'd stopped mining there years ago, but people were still paying rent. We worked to set up a community development corporation, did the legal paperwork, fought for utilities, and turned a company town into a community owned by the people who lived there. In the 1980s, we weren't outsiders anymore. Prestonsburg was home. And the people, they were organizing. They weren't waiting for the courts to save them. They were having meetings, petitions, voices raised together. Groups of community activists came together and started the Kentucky Fair Tax Coalition, KFTC, with the shared belief that the landowners should have a say and the coal companies should pay their fair share. In AppleRed, the Appalachian Research and Defense Fund, we were right there with them. We'd hold workshops, share strategies, draft bills. In 1984, we were able to pass a new bill called the Mineral Deed Act, carefully written to avoid the problems that happened with the consent bill. What this law said was that if the deed didn't spell out the method to be used to remove the coal, the companies must use methods that were common at the time the deed was written. Pick and shovel mining. Our first test case came in the case of Elizabeth Wooten. She was a Perry County widow. She buried her husband on the land there. The coal companies showed up to tear apart her land and the family cemetery. So she filed an injunction with AppleRed right beside her and won. And we won in the Court of Appeals, which meant that the coal companies, they couldn't mine her land, but they kept digging on land all around her, leaving her home an island in an ocean of strip-mined land. Next, in 1987, came Akers versus Baldwin. We put everything we had into that case, trying to uphold the constitutionality of the Mineral Deed Act, arguing that it respected contract law and human dignity. We had principle behind us. We had precedent behind us. We had the people behind us. The ruling came down. I read it once. I read it again. They didn't just rule against us. They shut the door completely. Supreme Court said that the legislature had no right to interpret what contracts mean. It was up to the courts to do that with the deed. So they struck down the Mineral Deed Act as an unconstitutional violation of the Separation of Powers Act. And the broad form deed was again the law of the land, a license to destroy. Surface owners are powerless to prevent the destruction of their land when deeds, mineral rights, are owned under deeds like this. Powerless. That was the word that I took onto front porches, into living rooms, into small town meetings, explaining to landowners that they were powerless to protect their own homes. The court didn't just shut the door, they nailed it shut. Powerless. 1938, Germany. When I woke up, there were storm troopers at the door. They had come for my father. He couldn't fight, he didn't fight, he knew what would happen. He stood there silently, calm, as if he'd come to accept it. My mother, she wasn't going to let him go without some small act of kindness. And she, like a good Jewish mother, she said to the stormtroopers, "Can you wait? Let me make him a sandwich." And they waited, maybe from shock, for just a moment, but then they left before the sandwich was done. So my mother, I'll never forget it. Of all the things she could have done, she chose this one small act as if somehow that could protect him. She finished the sandwich, she wrapped it into a cloth, and she pressed it into my hand. And she said, "Run, take this to your father." I didn't think, I just ran. A 7-year-old boy, stumbling through the street, still filled with glass, hair thick with smoke. And I saw him. 2 Gestapos were marching him down the street like a criminal. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I just handed him the sandwich. And then they took him away. I stood there watching him walk down the street, not knowing if I'd ever see my father again. Powerless. Mississippi, 1963. The most important thing I learned in Mississippi wasn't about winning, it was about losing. Fannie Lou Hamer was a sharecropper who spent her whole life in a system designed to keep her powerless. In June of 1963, she and some other activists were coming back from a voter rights workshop. And they stopped at a bus stop in Winona to go to the restaurant, to eat dinner. It was their right. They were arrested, hauled down to the local jail. They put Fannie Lou Hamer in a small cell in the back of the jail, and they brought in 2 black inmates, armed with blackjacks, who were ordered to beat her again and again. And when she collapsed, they ordered her to lay still so that they could keep beating her. It was as clear-cut a case as we'd ever seen. We had medical records, we had eyewitnesses, but we had an all-white jury. In 1963, in Mississippi, that told the story. The verdict came back, not guilty. And it was my job to go tell Fannie Lou Hamer. Ms. Hamer, I'm so sorry. We lost. They didn't convict those men who did this. they'll walk free. I sat across from her in her living room that day, expecting to deliver another crushing blow, expecting the weight of the verdict, the injustice of it all to seep into her bones the way it was seeping into mine. She just looked at me and she said, I've been losing my whole life. She told me about growing up on a cotton farm, working from dawn to dusk, hands raw, stomach empty, seeing men and women toil their whole lives for nothing but debt in a system designed to stop them from moving forward. And she told me about the first time that she tried to register to vote, how they held a gun to her head to show her what would happen to black women who didn't know their place. And when she didn't stop, she kept pushing, she kept organizing. They put her in a cell and they beat her until she couldn't walk. She looked at me that day and looked right through me, really. And she said, John, don't tell me about losing. What happened in that courtroom today, it's their loss. Because now the whole world knows. They can take away my home, they can take away my job, they can beat me until I can't see straight, but they didn't take away my voice. As long as I have that, I never lost. And I never heard anything like that before. And I understood something that would stay with me the rest of my life. Losing it wasn't about the verdict. It was about giving up. I had come to Mississippi thinking that the law could fix just about anything, that if you built the right case, if you stacked the evidence high enough, the truth would prevail. Fannie Lou Hamer, she knew better. She knew the fight wasn't just in the courts. It was out there, in the streets, in the fields, in the voices of people who refused to be silenced. And Fannie Lou Hamer, I saw her fight on. Next summer, she stood in front of the Democratic National Convention, and she told them what Mississippi had done. She made them listen. And I watched that, and I understood that justice wasn't just in the courtrooms, that the law wasn't everything, that power, real power, the kind of power that no governor, no court can take away, is in the people, who, no matter how many times they're knocked down, stand up again and again. As Fannie Lou Hamer told us, you have to make your own power. (1987), Kentucky. The Supreme Court had upheld the broad form deed. The coal companies were strip mining and blasting once again. Some people thought, well, we fought as hard as we could. We lost. Now we just have to accept it. We weren't going to get an answer in the courts. There was only so much that we lawyers could do. But our clients, they weren't through fighting. Elizabeth Wooten. My case was the test case for the broad form deed law. The Supreme Court, they ruled it unconstitutional. Now, there's coal companies going to try to come back on my land. Well, they ain't never going to strip my land. As long as I'm alive, as long as any of my 11 children are alive, they'll never strip my land. Everett Acres. We got multitudes that think that it's right. Yet 4 people in Frankfort say it's not right. You know, in my opinion, the coal companies own the courts of Kentucky. And I want to tell you, strippers, something. What makes you think you've got the right to steal our land, to take our land, to destroy our land, so we can't make a living on it? Shame on you. And shame on the courts of Kentucky. Think about what happened in the courts here. Back in the early 1970s, we go to the court and we have this contract, this deed, and we say, this isn't fair, this isn't right. The courts rule with the coal companies. Years later, we write the consent law. We take it up. The legislature's backed us and come up with the law, and the court says, you didn't write this the right way. Second loss. Decades later, the Mineral Deeds Act, carefully written, and this time the courts say the legislature can't do this at all. It's only up to us. We lose again. 3 strikes. Coal company wins every time. So what's next? There's only one path forward. We have to change the rules. Rewrite the Constitution of Kentucky. Now, our campaign wasn't backed by wealth or political clout. It was community activists from various counties came together, and they took the acronym KFTC, and they changed it now to Kentuckians for the Commonwealth. And under the motto, Save Our Home Place, we went from meeting to meeting, county to county, to remind people what was at stake. And we found legislators willing to stand up. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I know this is not an easy vote. There are powerful interests in this room who would rather this amendment never see the light of day. This isn't about them. This is about the people of Kentucky. People who've had their lands taken, their homes undermined, their rights ignored. Now, we're not asking you to ban mining. We're not asking you to take anything away. We're asking you to give the people the right to decide. Now, if the coal companies believe they're in the right, let them make their case to the voters. But please, do not silence the people before they've had their say. Now, the broad form deed only impacted 11 counties in eastern Kentucky, but we made sure that every legislator across the state heard from their constituents. And the legislators did the right thing. They voted to put the amendment on the ballot. And families marched from Pike to Fulton, reminding them that this wasn't just an eastern Kentucky problem, but a statewide outrage. November 8th, 1988, election night. 82% of Kentuckians voted to amend the Constitution. The largest margin ever in Kentucky for an individual or for an issue. And we won in every one of Kentucky's 120 counties. This wasn't just about the vote. It wasn't just about land. It was about belonging. This was about saying, this is our home, and no court, no company, no clause in the Constitution has the right to tear it apart. It wasn't just about the law. It wasn't just about the vote. It was about reclaiming our place, our home. (1938). 50 years earlier, almost to the day, November 10th, my mother, she had to make decisions. She had to make hard decisions. She sent me to live with my Aunt Mary and Aunt Ellie and Uncle Benjamin in Frankfort. I was a 7-year-old boy being separated from my mother and my brother, but she thought it would be better that way. They had a son, Bubby, who was about my age. And for a little while, it felt normal, 2 boys playing together while the darkness surrounded us. She left my brother Harry with our babysitter's family, the Josephs, while she moved from place to place, working to get the papers together, to do the paperwork, the bureaucracy, so that she could leave the country with us. My father and his brother Zemi and 125 other Magdeburg Jews were taken first to the local jail and put in cells much too small for all of them. Then they were put on a train and sent to Buchenwald concentration camp. This was 1938. This was before the camp was designed for the final solution, the mass extermination of the Jews. But it was still a place designed to punish, to suffer. 25 men died there, either from their own hands or the cruelty of it all. My father, he was determined to survive. After 17 days, he and my Uncle Zemi came back to Magdeburg. Their heads were shaved bald. They were gaunt, and their clothes hung on them, and they had a look in their eye that wasn't there before, but they were alive. And they had been given 30 days to get out of Germany. We had no choice. We had to leave. My father, he did everything he could to find a way to get us out. He had his sister, Mary, and her husband, Herman, and their 3 children lived in Rotterdam, Holland. And Uncle Herman, he was able to get us a green card. So it was legal for us to go there, but it wasn't legal for us to stay with them. We had to stay in a detention camp. So we moved there in a 10 by 10 room, 2 bunk beds and a bookshelf for all 4 of us. And it was a place where we waited and we tried to plan for what would come next. And my father, being my father, he didn't stay idle. He believed in times of uncertainty, even when shadows of fear were surrounding us, you had to keep moving forward. So he started a school in the detention camp for the children there. He would gather us together every day, and he would teach us mathematics, history, Hebrew. He would teach us that even though everything had been taken away, they hadn't taken away our ability to learn, our ability to think. He gave the children, he gave us something to do, something to focus on. It gave the parents the hope that maybe there was a future for them outside these walls. One day, my father, he was called into the central office of the camp there. There were men there from a Dutch organization. They were explained that they were putting together a new, bigger camp in Westerbork. And they had heard about my father in the school, and they said that you were going to come there and run the school for us. My father, he had a premonition, and he politely declined and left the meeting. Later, Westerbork was turned into a transit camp where Jews were sent first before they were sent to Auschwitz. My father, after that meeting, he wasn't sure that he wasn't going to be sent anyway, so he went to the committee, the people who were deciding who would go on the next ship and where they would go, and he went to the room to plead his case, and he went in and he heard a voice. "Rudy Rosenberg, what are you doing here?" It was Dr. Mosher, the man who had come to fundraise that my father had shown around Magdeburg. And he remembered my father. My father explained to him everything that had happened and begged for his help, and Dr. Mosher was able to arrange for passage on one of the next ships out. So we prepared to join that ship with hearts full of fear and hope. February 1940, the ship was filled, every inch of it, with families like us, fleeing the terrors that were sweeping across Europe. When we got to the English Channel, they stopped us and they searched for contraband. As we crossed the Atlantic, there was a lookout in the top mast watching for mines. The thing I remember most about that trip was watching The Wizard of Oz. They had it on the ship and they showed it to the children. And that moment when Dorothy stepped out of this world of black and white into this glorious, beautiful color, it was magical. This little girl swept away on her way back home. The trip, it felt endless. It was the cold, gray sea, the dull skies, the metal of the ship. And on February 22nd, we arrived in New Jersey, and there were flags everywhere. This vivid red, white, and blue, breaking the monotony of the trip. I thought they were for us. I thought that America was welcoming us. We found out later it was George Washington's birthday. We were the fortunate ones. We got out. So many others, they had their paths to escape blocked at every turn. My uncle Zemi and my grandmother Therese, they were scheduled to go on one of the next ships out. They put their belongings on the ship the night before, and that night, Nazis bombed the harbor, sunk all the ships. They were trapped. They were sent first to Buchenwald and then put on a train to go to Theresienstadt. They tried to make some semblance of a life there. Uncle Zemi even got married to a woman named Betty. But then they sent him to Auschwitz. He worked in the leather working shop. He started to speak out against the Nazis, against the suffering. When he was in the line to go to the gas chambers, he broke and he ran for the electric fence. They shot him in the back. My grandmother, Therese, she was in Theresienstadt until 1944, and then she too was sent to Auschwitz, where she was killed. Like so many others who lost their families, their dreams, their lives. Friends, family, neighbors, they just simply disappeared. My Aunt Ellie, Uncle Benjamin, also sent to Auschwitz, where they perished. Their son, Bubby, his fate was the same. He's just a boy. I'll carry their memories with me, always. My uncle, Zemi Rosenberg, grandmother, Therese Rosenberg, Aunt Ellie, Uncle Benjamin, Bubby, the Josephs, Aunt Mary, Uncle Herman, 3 children, and a 4th on the way, and millions of others. My father and my faith also taught me l'adore v'adore, from generation to generation. We pass on more than names and photographs. We pass on the things that matter, memories, faith, the quiet promise that we are part of something larger than ourselves. My father's voice reading from the Torah, my mother's hands teaching me how to light the Sabbath candles. These aren't just rituals. They're not just traditions. They're threads tying me back to my grandparents, my great-grandparents, and a long line of people who believed that you could make the world a better place. And one act of kindness, one act of courage at a time. The Dor Devor teaches us that we don't leave them in the past. We carry them with us through the way we live, through the way we remember, through the way we fight for a better world. 2024. Germany. I stand in the courtyard, and they are installing Stolpersteine, stumbling stones, near my old apartment. They were designed by a German artist, Gunter Demnig, and his idea was as powerful as it is simple, to put memories not in museums, but at people's feet, where they may happen upon them. Stop and remember the human beings that once lived there. Now, there are 4 shining brass plaques with the names Rudolf Rosenberg, my father, my mother Gerda Rosenberg, my brother Harry, and me, Hans Meinhard Rosenberg. That was my name before I boarded the ship in 1940. A name tied to nights of terror like Kristallnacht. A name gone, but not forgotten. When we arrived in the United States, my mother told me that Hans would become John. So I became John. And Hans Rosenberg had crossed the Atlantic to start a new life. 2024, Kentucky. Something remarkable happened. They named a square in Prestonsburg, Kentucky, Rosenberg Square. Friends, families, neighbors gathered there to honor the work that Jean and I had done there. Now, I told them then, and I'll tell you now, that nothing we did alone. And this is too big of an honor for any one name. Now, Jean suggested that they rename the square every year so that others could feel the same sense of gratitude and community that we felt. Now there are 2 squares that bear my name. One in Magdeburg, Germany, a memorial to a life stolen by hate, and another in Prestonsburg, Kentucky, a testament to a life filled with love and justice. Between Hans Meinhard Rosenberg and John Rosenberg, it's not just a name change, but a journey. There's learning how to live a life that matters. I was raised with 3 lessons. Tzedakah, not charity, but righteous giving. If there are others in need, I am incomplete. The door. We pass on what was passed down to us. And to Konalo. The world is broken. Our duty is not to grieve for it, but to fix it. And life taught me one more lesson. I had thought that justice was the end of the road. That if you won the case, if you changed the law, you were done. But justice without home is not enough. Jean taught me that. And so did the people who trusted me to stand with them. You fight for justice, but you stay for home. You stay so no one has to fight alone. That's the real work. That's what we were trying to do. Still are. We've stumbled tonight. We've remembered. The world it's still broken. It's our duty to bring whatever skills, talents, experiences each of us individually have to try to fix it. Now, it's time to do the work. That's the path forward, stone by stone.
One more minute. Every year, in remembrance of the Holocaust, we here at B'nai Shalom in congregations all around the world celebrate what's called Yom HaShoah, the reading of the names. We will gather here at B'nai Shalom, either out front, the weather is good, or inside our social hall. And we have lists that have been provided for years and years and years with the names of close to 6 million Jews who were murdered during the Holocaust. And we spend the day reading those names of the individuals who lost their lives during this time in our history, so that we can remember them and what they went through and be a part of making sure that it never ever happens again. Sunday, April 12th, about 2 months, is when we will do our Yom HaShoah reading of the names. And I would cordially invite any of you who would like to come and watch or participate. All you have to do is take a list, there's names on it, read the names of some group of folks, families, young babies, grandparents who were murdered during the Holocaust. And remember, so please join us then if you are able to. When we finish here, I'm going to invite everybody out to the social hall. We will have a brief break. If you will watch, Jeff has a video that he has prepared that will be showing on the screen up above the stage. Feel free to watch that video, entertain yourselves. We'll have refreshments. Restrooms are available out there for those of you that need that. We will then have our meet and greet with John and Jean, and then they will take questions. So if anybody has any questions that they would like to ask or comments that they would like to make to them or to Jeff, please prepare those and you'll be given the opportunity to do that. One last thing, I've never heard it done anywhere that I have been in response to an earlier question that I said to you or asked you to do. I'm going to suggest to you, you may now turn your phones back on. Thank you all very much for attending. Please exit out to the social. Thank you.
I'd like to offer to pay for having this performance from other places. I'm very good about that. Did you go to Charleston? Well, it's whatever Jeff can do. I'm going to try to do it with my brother for his birthday in North Carolina. But Jeff, that's a lovely idea. Any places you could go, I will pass.
This will help her. Sideways with her.
Something, if you pay Jeff's expenses, we can pay for our own. I'd like to see it perform more places. That's my girlfriend. And in order to perform more places, it might cost money, and I will pay the money. Tell Jeff, that's a wonderful offer.
Oh, Joe. You know what? It could be you.
What do you think?
Never. What's that?
We have a Moorhead person, John, who wants to meet you.
Moorhead? Yeah, we're here visiting from Moorhead.
What?